Means the most to me is the one I call passion for helping. And I've a number of people, but the first one would have been my father. My father and I were not close. My mother and I were extremely close. My father worked. My father never was a secure person, was always a little insecure, so he did things for people all over. From the cashier at the grocery store to the bank president. And when my father passed away some 20 years ago, I remember in the small town we're from, they were lined up 300 long to see him. And they went from the lowest to the highest level because of his insecurity, and he had a great ability to connect and ask people. When we were kids and we traveled and we go to a little motel, in the 50s, and he'd go in to see if they had 2 rooms for us to, for my sisters and I and my grandmother, my mother, dad. And he'd be in there for 10, 20 minutes. He'd come back out. Well, they don't have any rooms, but he knew their whole life story. And that connect and passion, observing him, but learning really at his funeral, because he did it, and I always said he was insecure, and therefore he went extra. I have a friend of mine, Dave Morrison, that said, whenever you feel insecure about something, you go that extra, and actually that becomes your strength. And I think that my dad's insecurity and learning how to help people, going out his way no matter what it was. He was always doing stuff for people. I have since learned that is the real fun in life. When you sit with someone and you've made one little change, and it's not what you did or it's what they've done, that's the pleasure.
So when you went to his funeral and you saw this, that must have been a whoa.
It was definitely a whoa. It's terrible to say, my dad chewed his fingernails. He was always nervous a little bit. Didn't think people liked him. But what he didn't have a good sense of reality. So they all loved him because he would do things for them. But you definitely, people that I didn't know he did things for. Again, the cashier at the grocery store, shared with me one time how he took her home, stayed late one night to make sure she got her car wasn't working. That's just the way he did things. But what that prepared me for, and where I'm at right now, and what I do is I have my mother's, I guess, confidence in what I do. That's my mother had that side, but this just kind of prepared me as working with executives and CEOs, understanding where they want to go, helping them get there, and knowing the joy that provides me with. And it's not that they have to give me any gratitude, just knowing that they're getting out of life what they want. And when I reflect through my whole life, I went to the seminary for 2 years. That prepared me for it. When I worked in public accounting on small companies, that prepared me. When I was in the finance, then when I did turnarounds, all these things have been there. And then when I stepped into executive forums, it's like, for 50 years you've been preparing for this, and it just fit what I'm doing right now. One of my rules is when I travel is to go to small towns and stay there for a week. I tell people, if you were to come to the United States, don't go to Chicago. Stay in a small town, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin. Travel to Chicago, but come back to that small town. Have your meals, have your breakfast, and you'll get to meet people. We had a rule in our family, was get lost, make a wrong turn, and see the world. We've stumbled across more things. We spent 3 nights on this trip in Mexico. We saw a church out in the away from the road. We saw this nice steeple. My mother said, well, let's go see what that is. So we drove over there. It was a Catholic church, and my dad and I stayed with the priest. There was a convent about a quarter mile away. My mother, my grandmother, my 2 sisters stayed with him. They had it was built by the Spaniards. It had a swimming pool, a bowling alley, and both my sisters and I vividly remember that 3 days. It was a great experience of just getting immersed in learning about something that we never, but it was a wrong turn. It was get lost. So that's where your memories come from, not so much from planned things, but happenstance things. The greatest gift God gave us is fellow human beings. And I have had so many experiences of meeting people and seeing people. And I can sense that in particularly my grandsons. My daughter, I know, has it, because she does these things. I guess if there's a thing that I feel is that when I've been in a little town in Hungary, and I asked the guy, I says, well, you've been controlled by the Nazis. You've been controlled by the communists. Do you like people from Germany? Do you like people from Russia? He said, oh, I love them. He said, I don't like the leaders. In Israel, I asked our guide, geography professor, Jewish, and I said, well, what do you think about the Palestinians? Palestinians, my neighbor's one great person. I don't like the leaders. So I believe if we could sit across from each other, the 99% of the population of the world, and get to meet each other, we could do away with all the strife. It's that Hitler, Stalin's, and I remember one gentleman tell me, I love Americans, I just don't like whoever the president was at that time. So that's, to me, what the world's all about. 8-10 hours a day, people are engaged in whatever work they're at. The leader sets the emotional tone. And if the leader truly, and I'll use your words, heartfelt, but is really there for the people and is trying to help the people get better, it's to his benefit if he has a workforce that is engaged, that is taking care of themselves, they're healthy, they communicate, they work as a team, they're learners, that worker in that type of environment where the CEO is set, this is the tone, we're a highly effective team, not so much from the financial side, but from the human side, that worker will take that back home. The best example is if the CEO says we're going to be a learning environment, we're always going to learn new things, we're going to go through training, we're going to books, we want to try different things. And there's a discipline, every 2 weeks we're going to have an hour of some type of education. You got to prepare yourself. And he knows that, there are 3 ways to learn, the kinesthetic, the audio, or the visual. That employee will go home with their children and say, you guys need to be learners. You need to sit down and understand what you're trying, what the teacher's trying to do and how you do it. So, in a way, I think business, and I wear a bracelet that business improves family lives. Effective run business that runs, as you would say, from the heart, actually will improve family lives of all their employees. Heartfelt has taken it up to another level. If I really care about you and I want you to get better, and I feel we need to talk about some tough things, I'm willing to step up there and know that that's that true caring. I just don't know if the servant would tackle those things.